And welcome to episode number 2 of Magic Man in the Morning. And we are live from Toronto, and it is a cool freezing. And for our guests out there, we're expecting 4 to 8 inches of snow possibly coming down in the next 12 hours. So I'll be staying at home, enjoying some coffee, probably some nice chili afterwards, and enjoy the day until the Lakers play the Wolves tonight. I'm joined by my very good friend and guest, Joe Soro. And Joe, good morning.
Good morning. I would have my coffee here, but I don't drink coffee.
You don't drink coffee? You're not Dan Campbell. You're not gonna slam, 24 ounces of
I think Dan Campbell was gifted caffeine when he was birthed.
He must have been, man. He must have been. He is hype. I don't think that guy can sleep without waking up in the middle of the night and just screaming at the top of his lungs.
Sure, the gyrating coach usually dies out in today's NFL, and even to some degree, even before. But he's actually very, very good. I mean, if you need to know, the fact that he somewhat resurrected Jared Goff here should show you enough. And of course, a good draft in 2022, getting Hutchinson, those guys.
And I love his attitude too, like the whole like biting kneecaps and all that, because I know what he's saying to his guys in the locker room.
Yeah,
Let me take care of that dumb stuff. You guys just keep winning. I can handle them.
it's a good thing. When you're sure of yourself, you can say things that are typically feared,
Unorthodox. Yeah,
unorthodox and feared, because especially with what happened in New Orleans a few years back with all the we want to tear ACLs with Greg Williams, and I'm sitting there even then, and this is really before the overly sensitive culture that we have now.
Yes.
I'm going, you do know he's joking, right? Like, he's not talking about literally going and breaking ACLs. So the sensitivity thing.
Yeah, it's the whole attitude behind it, Joe. I remember one of the reasons why I wanted to play linebacker in high school was because of Chris Spielman. And Chris Spielman was a warrior, man. And he said in an interview that I play football the same way every single down. I'm trying to knock the guy out in front of me, and I have the same attitude that he's trying to knock me out on every play. And he said, that's just the way it is. That's just the way it is.
Nothing's changed in a lot of ways, because you can't really change football.
No.
There's only so much you can do. Apparently, this year had more concussions than before, or at least the year before.
Bryce Young. Shout out to Bryce Young. No one doubts you or your size. That won't deter you in the NFL, man. Right. But you gotta get heavier.
But the thing is, their
guys don't last too long in the pocket.
Yeah, the concussion call is more just the advancement in diagnosing it now versus probably when they weren't. So I don't know how much effect that has. I know it's been a few years here where they've been monitoring it, but I don't know how you can play football without injuries. It's just or head injuries. It's just that you might as well just play flag football, which I wouldn't be surprised in 20 years it happening, because what else? Where else are they going to go? It's football. You need to play football. That's it.
I might get off topic here. If Gerald was here, I'd probably bring up the South Park episode of Sarcastaball where they just get rid of everything and they're wearing like bras on their heads. they go all out with there.
Talk about those guys, Matt Stone and wow, I drew a blank on the other one. Trey Parker. Sorry, they have immunity to political correctness, so they have said some things that would crush the most hardened people.
And you know something? I agree with you 100%, Joe. And I love them even more after COVID, because they could have totally like sold out and tried to play the game, but they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't do it. They even made fun of Comedy Central attitude towards the whole thing. Like, there's no sacred cow with them, and I respect that. Like,
There's two lessons to be learned by that. And again, I don't watch South Park. I've seen some episodes and they are funny. I will admit that, but a little too corny for my taste. I'm more of a Beavis and Butthead type, which
yeah,
doesn't say much either, right?
no,
But
but that's hilarious as
but
well.
the thing is, what they've shown is they've shown that their fan base is loyal to them regardless. And I'm pretty sure different types of people that watch that show. It's not just one particular
Oh
person.
yeah, it's been on for almost 25 years. So
Sure.
they've had already 2.5 generations of fan base. So
And the other part is money talks. So
money talk.
as long as you are making money, political correctness will take a back seat, even to the most staunch fakers, as I call them.
100%.
You know,
So we've got a huge game tonight, and huge in the sense that we need to win. So right now, the Minnesota Timberwolves sit 8th in the playoff standings right now. They'd play the Clippers for the right to be the 7th seed if the season ended today. They just beat them. So there's no reason not to think that if they ended up playing them again in a play-in game, they would beat them. I have no doubt about that, actually. We know the story of both those clubs. Eventually, both of them will falter, but if they play each other, one has to beat the other one. So we find ourselves just below the play-in, Joe. So we really need this game. If we beat the Wolves, we come within one game of an 8th spot. We're going to discuss a little bit the Rudy Gobert trade and what kind of fruit it's bared so far. I have to say this. My opinion so far is that although at the time it was looked like a good move on paper, overall you'd have to give them a C. It's a solid C move right now. I mean, they're one of the big reasons why they made the Gobert trade was they just got mauled on the boards against the Grizzlies in that first round. It was a 6-game series, but it was really only a 6-game series because Anthony Edwards willed Minnesota in a couple of those games. But Memphis just mauled them in the paint and dominated them on the board. So Minnesota decided that they needed a big in the paint to help facilitate a better defense. Now, here's what happened, Joe. They jettisoned 5 really, really, really good core players. You got rid of Pat Beverly. You got rid of Malik Beasley. You got rid of Jared Vanderbilt. You got rid of Josh Okogie. And you got rid of, eventually, D'Angelo Russell. Now, you also drafted Walker Kessler, but you traded him too. So that's 6 really good core players, and 4 out of those 6 are fairly decent defenders. I include Walker Kessler in that as a defender. So I think what happened is, Joe, the Timberwolves made a miscalculation. They thought that Anthony Edwards' trajectory as a superstar, he willed them to that 6 games instead of thinking that he had a solid group of defenders around him that complemented his style as well, which also includes a nice dribble drive game. And they blew that up and they decided we'll go the defensive route. Now they're an average defensive team. They're 15th overall defensively. They're an average rebounding team. They're actually a worse rebounding team this year than they were last year. So, what is your opinion of the Gobert trade so far, and what, if anything, do you think the Wolves can do to try and stop that bleed?
unfortunately, the Wolves did a move similar to what Rob Pelinka did when he traded for Russell Westbrook. You had a core base that was, you could say, on the come up. Anthony Edwards had a little bit of a coming out party uh, during the playoffs, and you assume that this would be a residual into the 22-23 season. Unfortunately, that's not the case. Anthony Edwards did not, at least from what I've seen, go to another level this year. He did go to another level in a series last year, but he hasn't continued that. If you're going to blame the roster on that, there's some merit there, but this is basketball. It's not like a quarterback needs a good line. Otherwise, it's going to be hard for him to make decent routes work because he doesn't have enough time to throw it. This is basketball. Anthony Edwards should still be improving, and I feel like he kind of plateaued this year, which didn't help. You have Karl Anthony Towns, which before we got on tonight or this morning, we discussed how there's something missing with Karl Anthony Towns, and it revolves around a lot of winning. It's really about the winning part. He doesn't grasp the winning part. And it showed itself when he couldn't finish at Kentucky during their almost undefeated season. You have way too much talent on that team to not, and you're too talented being the first pick overall and having the skill sets you have by not finishing that out. So winning matters. There's certain guys that just have a knack for winning, and you want winners around you. I could list a few players in my time that I've watched. I'm like, you ever notice how this guy's always around winning? He doesn't have to necessarily be someone that's a superstar. It's just they got a knack. Danny Green is one of those guys. He always seems to be around winning because he does stuff that's not always about points and stats and things like that. And I think even fans like us forget that. But as far as the mistakes made, I supported the Gobert trade because they're Minnesota. No one's going to go over there. They're not going to really do much. Now, looking back on it and starting to look back on roster construction, I think we finally have hit this part in the NBA now where the third star is no longer going to be as important anymore as it used to be. And even with the Golden State Warriors having the 3 stars on their team, obviously Durant was the 4th, or I should say he was really 1A with Steph Curry, right? But
Yes.
3-star league, was that particular team is different because they were all drafted by that team. So it just, that's kind of how that worked. The 3-star team is done unless you had 3 players that were really understanding of who they are and what they want to do.
And you had one guy, at least one guy, who's willing to sacrifice more so than everybody else. Because ultimately, if you have a squad like that, like you said, Joe, you could have 3 stars.
Yes, and that's another thing too, because Draymond Green and Thompson. Draymond Green he's the garbage guy. He's the Dennis Rodman of that group. But Thompson, I don't think will ever get enough credit for not being that I want it to be my team guy. He never. That played a huge part in why Golden State played the way they did.
100%. And speaking of the Wolves, they really wanted him, right? They really wanted him.
And it took Jerry West to sit down Golden State and say, no, do not do that. So skill set's amazing. Shooting, he's the second best shooter ever, by the way. I could say that. Yes, better than Ray Allen.
Agreed.
Better than Dale Ellis. Better than even Curry's pops, whatever, right? Yeah. And more important than any of that is he learned something from his pops, Michael Thompson, that it's very obvious that he's like, dude, you want to win championships or you don't want to worry about jumping to another team and wanting to be your own star, right?
Yeah.
Like that's stuff. Look, if you are going to be a Michael Jordan or a Kobe Bryant, you will be that, right? Yes. If you're not those guys, how about embracing who you are, which, by the way, he's still a Hall of Famer, right? He's
Yes.
still going to be the second best shooter of all time.
Yes.
Why not win championships and have a legacy that you can actually sit down and go, man, I won 4 championships, and I was
Yep.
never a detriment to my team. I'm going to the Hall of Fame. I'm going to be a Warriors legend. So Thompson gets it, right? And that plays a big part here. Now, shifting to Minnesota, Gobert, Karl Anthony Towns, Anthony Edwards, obviously not that same dynamic. Otherwise, we probably see a better result from what we've seen. Almost identical record from last year. They didn't really improve at all, right? But I did support the trade because they're Minnesota. They had to put something in there. But looking back on it now, like we did with the Westbrook trade, Tim Connolly, unfortunately, dismantled the team he didn't need to dismantle. But that's what happens when you get intoxicated.
You're in the chair, right? You're the big, and you want your squad on there, right, Joe?
Correct.
It's all about, you know what? It doesn't matter about the success last year because I'm in the chair now and I get to say who's on the roster.
And ego is an interesting, like when you're in a position of leadership and you let your own ego dictate things, this is what happens. You can't let your ego dictate important decisions. It's about the team, it's about the job, it's about the business. And I see it all the time. I see it all the time. It's comical how badly people are in delusion on their capabilities.
Yeah.
It's
Joe,
like,
one of my favorite stories about what you were just saying is off the song Beat It. Now, a lot of people might not know this, but if you look at the album credits, there's no credit, no roll call for who did the solo on Beat It, and it was Eddie Van Halen. And Quincy Jones called Eddie Van Halen, and like Eddie Van Halen's like in his like own world. Like people needed to understand, like this is the greatest guitar player who ever lived. Sorry, Jimi Hendrix, but that's just the truth. So he's not really familiar with like Quincy Jones. Oh, don't give me that BS. He's calling me like I'm busy, man. Like no, but it's Quincy Jones. So he goes into the studio, Joe. He listens to Beat It. It's not good. Like it's not good. And he doesn't know how to tell the greatest pop star in the world that, you know, man, like as great as a musician you are, this song isn't good right now. So what he does is he changes the whole middle section of that song and he adds his solo to it. And he finishes it and he says that he knows when he plays it for him, one of two things is going to happen. Either he's going to throw his security guards are going to throw him out of the building, like into a dumpster, because he completely changed his song, or he's going to really like it. So Mike listens to the song, Joe. He absolutely falls in love with it. He turns around, he slaps Eddie on the knee and says, "Thanks for making my song better." And Eddie Van Halen didn't ask for credit. He didn't talk about it. He didn't care, man. He was just in there to make the song better. And like you were saying, Joe, people like yourself, Eddie Van Halen, sometimes they could just put their ego aside and realize that it's for the best of both parties, whatever you're doing. If it's a good idea, it's a good idea, right?
validation, the constant drug of validation, and we see it. We blame current times, social media. We're always blaming something, right, for why people are empty. It's always been there. You just know about it now. You just know that this is what it's about. You're always blaming and blaming and blaming. It's always a blame game. There is a good time to look in the mirror, and the best time to look in the mirror is when you see something not working. That's where you go look. This is still America. Okay, we have choices here, but believe it or not, I know a lot of people in California don't agree with that, but I've been in California almost my whole life. Yes, even in California, you have a choice, guys. It's not that bad, but you know, you start looking in the mirror and you start realizing, man, I really screwed this up because I needed
Mm.
to do this, right?
And that's a difficult conversation to have with yourself, but it needs to take place.
It takes place, but then it could go the wrong way, right? What could go wrong? You start getting suicidal thoughts. You start fumbling. You know, that's to the extreme, obviously, but you start fumbling even more stuff to make up for the bad part, right? No, there's no answer at that point. It depends on the situation. So now you gotta. The only thing I can tell you is you gotta learn from it and make sure that it's not about you. But it's hard for people because they want validation. They want to be this. Let me tell you something out there for those of you who are listening. If you have to do something to make you to get the attention, if you have to really go out of your way to do it, you're not it.
No,
You're not
no.
it, guys. Okay? You're just not. Either you are or you're not. It's okay, guys. I've had friends that I've told this to, and of course, they still love me because they know who I am. They know where I come from. I said, look, either you got it or you don't. Yes, you're not capable of being this guy. You don't have the personality for it. You are good at going to work, coming home, and that's it. You're not gonna go. You're not a killer. Are
Yeah,
you?
and Kobe talked about that in the Mamba mentality, Joe. He said greatness isn't for everybody. And the very next line was, and that's not a disrespect or an impunity on someone's character or who they are as a person. It's just that's just the way it is with some people. Like there are some people who are completely self-motivated, but at the same time, as our good friend Laker Tom likes to point out, the most successful people are also able to balance being self-critical and being positive, because you got to where you are by being the person that you are instead of focusing on all the negative. There's something to be said about being a positive person and positive affirmation. What you put out in the world is what you get back. So if it's just negativity, you're going to project negativity, and if it's positivity, you're going to project that. And that's what I want to see tonight, man, because Minnesota's been an up and down team. Well, with this squad, and I haven't seen the injury report yet, but I'm sure AD will be good to go tonight. Then we got to win. They got to just put it in drive right now, get it up to 180, and just go. I'm tired of this, man. I really am. It's been 18 months of this almost had to be censored there by Gerald in editing. I'm sick of this, man. Last year after the All-Star break, we finished 9-25. That's disgusting. You're basically only winning a third of your games. Now this year, we're barely winning half of them at times. So they got to just kick it up in gear. And I know that we all said the same thing, basically. You said the moves were for next year. I said the trade was successful, but the patient's still going to die. We also don't think LeBron's coming back for the rest of the regular season. So they need to go 2-0 this weekend, Joe. They got to beat the Wolves and they got to beat the Warriors. And it doesn't matter if it's by a point or by 30. They got to win both of these games, brother. What are your thoughts?
I agree. I'm not hearing anything out of Laker camp that AD's not playing tonight. I believe he will play tonight. I was expecting D'Angelo back. I'd feel a hell of a lot better if he was playing. So I don't know where
Well,
this
if
could.
Steph's coming back on Sunday, D'Angelo, you better be coming back on Sunday too.
I don't know. We can still talk about this for hours, but we're never going to get a solution here. I think we're looking at a baseball type mechanism here with the NBA, where they're going to start managing NBA players' games like they do in baseball, where they'll give a guy a day off every now and then because it's 162 games in baseball. I guess it was more accepted at that in that particular sport because there's so many games and it you baseball isn't so much. I mean, it's star driven, but stars don't make the kind of impact in baseball like they do in the NBA. The NBA,
No.
one guy out of five can make a difference on the court.
In baseball, it takes several.
The interesting part about what's going on here with with the current standings is the Clippers. I guess absolutely. I don't. Choke is not the word. They faltered in the second half last night, and we're looking at an 0-4 record since their acquisition of Russell Westbrook. And for those of you who saw our glee, at least I don't know, I know I was glee. If that's a
Joe
word.
was gleeful, ladies and
I was
gentlemen.
very gleeful, if that's a word,
It is.
when I heard that news, because I knew he was going to napalm that team. That team was already playing the load management game, and never other than playing against the Lakers, they don't show me much.
It's the it's the dinosaurs, right? The comets ready to come. You're just waiting for the time of day,
And
and it's finally come.
and not only that, I heard that he was going to start. Okay, when I
Oh.
heard he was going to start, I laughed even gleefully, if that's a word, even more gleefully, because now I'm sitting there, and this is before this 4-game run. He had lost 10 games in a row in the last 10 games he had started. Well, you know what the number is now. It's 14 in a row. Guys, 14. So for all the people out there who are laughing about how Lakers stink and how Westbrook was just not all to be blamed, yes, he is to be blamed. It wasn't his fault to get traded to LA, but it was his fault that his game is a detriment to winning. Whether it got a little bit better on the bench, but not much.
No,
Because if you're playing him in the fourth quarter, he is destroying your chance at winning. It's not just on the offensive end. It's really the team defense, the individual defense, and the overall aura that permeates from him. He permeates selfishness. Even though he's not a selfish guy, his game does.
well,
It's
and
just
there's I think that again, just somehow, some way, certain role players who find themselves on that team who are really good end up getting buried. And if you're a Vika Zubats, you can't be happy that Miles Plumlee has come in, basically eaten a chunk of your minutes. And they're not really playing Bones Highland much because they got to play Russ. And, Joe, they remind me so much of the Toronto Maple Leafs, man. It like, no matter what moves they make, there just seems to be like you said, this dark, shadowy shroud around the success of the team. Like, the bottom's gonna come out eventually. It's just a question of when, not if. Um, so we're looking at a team like the Clippers, the Wolves, the Warriors right now, who are ahead of us and just have as many leaks in the boats as we do, but they either have better depth or they've had a little bit more continuity than we have throughout the year. And that's why we find ourselves 2-3 games back when, if we played half decent through the first half, right, and didn't choke away a dozen or so games, we might be sitting there in the sixth spot, up 2 or 3, instead of looking up at the eighth spot, down 3. But we find ourselves where we are, and I just wanted to get your thoughts on one more thing regarding the Wolves, Joe. So eventually, there's always a fall guy. It doesn't matter who it is. It's either the front office or the coach. Usually in a front office, right, we know you get 2 or 3 years, relatively speaking. Team improves a little bit, you usually get an extension. if the team's bad, usually the front office gets a reprieve. You get to hire a new coach, but within a year or two, if that coach doesn't pan out, you're gone too. So, do you think Chris Finch is the fall guy for the Wolves if they don't at least make a 6th seed? Because the whole idea behind the Gobert trade was uh, to try and vault them basically into a top 4 spot, and that's not happening, Joe. They gutted their team. They don't have the depth. Uh, Carl Anthony Towns' calf is basically hanging by a thread. He's got a grade 3 calf tear that he's been dealing with for almost 3 months now. So on top of having respiratory issues and immunology issues, Carl Anthony Towns' body is starting to break down a little bit as well. So do you think Chris Finch is a fall guy here?
Coach is always the fall guy. Look what happened with Frank Vogel. He had a
Coaches are hired to be fired, right?
he had a malcontent for a player who pretty much sabotaged an entire season based off of a bad decision making by a general manager listening to another player, LeBron James, and trying to improve the team. This is the part of business that is comical, right? You blame a guy who brought you a championship, who had an identity for your team, which is something we've been discussing for a while now. At least Frank Vogel gave you an identity. And when you did have these injuries and load management issues, he still kept your team afloat as a very comparable team, at least in the identity of a defensive team, which is what we had. 2021 should have told you how good Frank Vogel was for this team.
Oh my goodness.
Because LeBron and AD still have missed more games that year than they had missed in any other year, right? But yet we were still number 1 on defense going into the year, and had AD not gotten hurt, we were up 2-1 against a very good team that ended up, blowing a couple games in the finals. Otherwise, they'd have been the champs.
Yeah, it was half decent. And then LeBron got hurt, and unfortunately, we had a G League offense at that point.
Yeah, and then we talk about AD. The reason why I don't harp on AD a lot as much is I remember distinctively AD saying after the 2021 season, "Let's run it back." There was commentary where he said, "Let's run it back." But of course, AD being this Klay Thompson type guy, that's another thing that I admire about Anthony Davis. He isn't the guy. Now, they call him soft, they call him street clothes, they call him this and that. I go, yeah, well, if you're not demonstrative, you're soft, right? We heard this with Pau Gasol too. I heard it with Dirk Nowitzki. If you're too demonstrative, you don't care about winning.
Rasheed Wallace, you just get texts.
You're too much like LeBron. LeBron is all about him. So it's hilarious, that commentary, how that gets mixed into everything. So this is something I'm glad you kind of brought up, in that, who to blame. The blame game comes in so many different factors, right?
It's like an octopus.
So Tom Conley, for whatever reason, went star shopping. And he's like, I don't care how much that Rolls Royce is, I'm paying for it. I don't care if it's 2 years old. Even though that particular year for the Rolls Royce might have been the worst year in terms of engineering for that particular vehicle, right? I just want a Rolls. I want a Rolls Royce. Why walk around with a Rolls Royce, 4-time defensive player of the year, and we got 2 offensive-minded guys? This is going to work. Problem is, who's going to play defense, on the perimeter? We're in a perimeter league, right? They're going to draw his ass out, and you're done. That's why Utah couldn't win in the playoffs.
And they had to give up their best perimeter players for him, their future for him. And now you've got a guy on a contract who's going to be paid 42, 43, and in a player option, $46 million, which he will not decline. So
I don't see any.
Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I don't see any way where Karl Anthony Towns stays a Minnesota Timberwolves if this team wants to turn the page. Otherwise, they're just going to be stuck in the mud and playing the 8th seed game or 9th seed game, whatever, and hoping that that's what's going on. Because there's no, the construction of this team is too top heavy. They could give it another shot next year. I guess they might not have a choice, which is fine. If you want to give it another shot next year, maybe they get somebody in the draft or whatever to kind of help them where they need it. But after next year, I'd say if they're still treading water every year, they're going to have to do something, because we also don't want to kill something too quick, which is what happened. They had a young team. They had depth, right? But they're like, man, if we could just get this one guy, it could help. Yeah, if you can get that one guy without trading what you have.
And you know something, like you said, since we're in a perimeter league, a lot of people just fall in love with their own ideas or their own group. They don't think about the big picture, right? So two teams kind of made mistakes this year, Joe, and I think I'll try and get Gerald to talk about it later on. But the Hawks thought they were one piece away, and they weren't, and they gave up a lot. The Wolves thought they were one piece away, and they're not, and they gave up a lot. And now both of those teams are stuck in neutral right now, and you're stuck in mud, and there's no help around, and it's starting to rain, so you're starting to slide down the hill. That's how bad it is for these two franchises right now. There's a lot going on in the NBA, but people should pay attention to those two situations, because I think that's going to be a wolves in the henhouse situation this summertime, picking the bones off those two if you could take advantage of them. Before we head on out, we need to talk about dinner for breakfast, Joe. I'm not sure how big of a fan you are of that. I am. Having been a paramedic for almost 10 years, you just kind of figure out different ways of finding nutrition. And I remember being a kid, and breakfast for dinner was fun. But as you age, sir, you find dinner for breakfast is the tits.
It's about timing a lot of times, unless you're on a specific eating regimen. Um, the thing that makes eggs and bacon or a sausage good at night is especially eggs. Eggs digest very, very quickly and very well.
Yes.
And if you're trying to get good protein in, that's why you see all these bodybuilders eating 40 eggs a day, right?
Yeah, eggs are such a hybrid food. You could have them in the morning, but they're just as nutritious for you in the evening.
Yeah, because you want to stay away from any kind of carb after 6, really. Ideally, you would want to stay away from that. Now, when you look back on the history of people, right? I always laugh when I see Westerns with people who are kind of heavy set. I'm always curious on how accurate that is, because I'm like, well, what were these guys eating then when they were hunting their own food, right? Were they just hunting bear and eating 14 times a day? It's always a curious, I get into that mode sometimes of, was it really like this then? Right? But in today's world where food is 24/7, you can get it anywhere, and of course, most of it is bad. If you're able to be disciplined enough and understanding that there's certain foods you shouldn't eat at night, then eggs play a big part in eating at night, eating your eggs and bacon at night. I'm back and forth on pork. I don't want to eat pork, but I love spare ribs or baby back ribs. I love bacon.
Pork chops tastes good.
Pork chops. My mom used to make really good pork chops. My wife now makes the same ones. So I don't have them a lot because I like to savor the taste. I don't like to eat them.
Of course, there's so much flavor in pork. You don't want to just abuse it. That's a great point, Joe.
Yeah. So it's like a good steak. Good steaks, I try to eat good steaks maybe every 3 to 4 months, maybe every 6 months, just because I want to enjoy it. I don't know the appeal of cold pizza. I've tried eating cold pizza. It tastes like crap to me. I prefer it to be hot.
Yeah, me too. I agree.
So at night, yes, I've done the breakfast thing, hash browns and bacon and eggs before, and I love bread with my yolk, so that plays a part in that as well. Unless I scramble it. If I scramble it, I do need to usually put some kind of bell pepper or tomato in there. It just makes it taste better. And that's essentially. I'm a big supporter in eating eggs and bacon at night, and maybe one of these nights when we do Jamie's show, we'll we'll uh, we'll do that. And of course, we'll have to do that on this show at some point because the sizzle at the beginning of the show is warrants it.
100%. And by the way, just this might be a hot take. I'm not sure if it is or not, but if you're gonna do caramelized onions in the morning, all right, take your time with it. Caramelized onions when they're really crispy, you need to take your time. It's at least 10 to 15 minutes. None of this 5 minutes and then no, 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 no. You're gonna do something, you do it right. And as far as breakfast is concerned, with caramelized onions, you take your time.
Onions is a very temperamental food. Sometimes I eat it and it's gone after I'm finished. Sometimes it lingers on for 3, 4 hours. I tend to stay away from onions most of the time. Anything garlicky most of the time.
It adds so much punch to
And it
a meal.
resonates off you too. That's the
Yeah,
problem. I don't like.
yeah, it's coming through your pores. I get it.
I don't like.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't like
I
smelling.
remember
I
you
don't,
saying that.
I love crab boil. Right, there's a place called the Kickin' Crab, and there's a few other places, but Kickin' Crab's my
Now
favorite.
take me.
Yeah. Oh, when you get into town, I'll take you there. That where the garlic kind of gets stuck in the nose hairs here, you can smell it
Oh,
still. So, and you
oh,
don't want to have that every week again. You want to have that
no.
every so often so they can savor the crab and the shrimp, right? But the problem is there's this constant odor in your nose of garlicky type things, and you almost have to put cologne here to not smell it. And then, of course, if you go into a restaurant and the the air permeates into your if you're wearing cotton, it's going to permeate into your clothes. Then when you're walking around, people, especially like my wife, she's like, "Yeah, I can smell you into you ate crab. I can smell the garlic." I hate that. I don't like smelling.
I
And
know. You mentioned that that's a pet peeve of yours.
yeah, you gotta smell fresh. You gotta be fresh. You look
Oh,
good.
I mentioned that. I mentioned that on Playbook to all you slackers out there. If you have to ask yourself, do I smell? And then you actually verbalize that to somebody, you already got your answer. So
So
so go to the drugstore, go to DVS, go to Costco, wherever, pick up a package of 4 sticks. You keep one stick in your room, you keep one stick in your house, keep one stick in your car. You will never smell, ladies and gentlemen. But you guys out there, you slackers, go
the
ahead,
the
Joe.
the hygiene of a man push has been decades in the making. So in college, there used to be a lot of laughs. And, I used to have a story I used to tell. I go, girls do their hair, put their makeup on, pluck their eyebrows, shave their legs, put on very pretty dresses and clothes and do their nails and do all this stuff for you. They'll say it's about them. It's not. It's for you. It's for us. Okay. The least you can do is wipe your rear end well. Okay. Make sure it's clean. Okay. Make sure it's clean. And of course, I'm using G-rated language here. Of course, I say it in another way. It's like you got the women doing all this for you, girls for you. And the least you can do is keep your damn rear end clean. Okay. It's not that hard for us. Okay. We're not shaving. We're not plucking. At least not, I don't. And you know what? You know how long it took me to put my hair up today?
About
Literally
3
30
seconds.
seconds. Okay. I got the gel. I went like this, and then I do this, and I went like this. I didn't even use a comb. So the least you can do is
Be
reciprocate,
clean. Be clean.
reciprocate. Okay. So that when you're having your intimate moment, they're not thinking about anything other than having the intimate moment. Yes, we are talking love here on Magic Man in the morning here today on Friday. But yeah, so just like we talk about the NBA, right?
Even a
NBA.
little early for
Be
afternoon delight
available. Be
here.
available, right? Just like we're talking about the NBA. Be available. Okay. As a person, be available. Being available means being prepared. So tonight, the Lakers hopefully have AD back. It's going to be tough again when you don't have a floor general other than Dennis Schroeder, which is always a hot and cold even during the day. But if we can harness whatever we did in the Oklahoma City Thunder game into this game, we can come out of a win and then hope. Gerald cursed me with that word. We can go into the next game against the Warriors with a full team other than LeBron. Then we have a little bit of an easier time trying to win that game. The Lakers controlled their own destiny in a lot of ways because they're playing guys that are ahead of them practically the whole way. So it's not about waiting for this team to lose or that team to lose. Even that Portland, New Orleans game, even that wasn't really, we have to hope someone loses because
it's a one-off.
one of them
Somebody's
losing,
win,
one of them losing is good for us. It didn't matter. Lakers have to win, and they have to win more. They have to win 3 of every 4 games at this point. If they don't, then I don't know what
Joe.
I don't know where it ends. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's the bottom line. That's the bottom line right now. 30 and 33. We got 19 games left. Yeah, you got to win 3 out of 4. So you got to go 12, 14, at least 13 and 6 right now.
Yeah, I could see that happening. If D'Lo gets back and doesn't miss games again, we know that AD is going to miss games again, of course, because that's what they do.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to take it. We have to take it per game at this point because we have no choice. This is not a cliche. We have no choice because we can sit here and go, "Oh, we're gonna have a good weekend because so and so is going to be." The Lakers are kind of on a roll; they're winning, and then all of a sudden, oh, by the way, he's not playing. Okay, fine. I give up. Let's just wait till the game starts and then we'll decide then.
Yes. So as we conclude this morning, couple of notes to leave off with. Dinner for breakfast and breakfast for dinner are both really great things. And 2, let's just get a W tonight because I'm sick and tired of talking about being in 12th place for the past 18 months. We've been in 12th place for the past 18 months. Let's get going. And with that, I'll end Magic Man in the Morning, episode 2. Joe, I can't thank you enough for stopping by with your busy schedule. It'd be great. Hope to have you on again. And we'll see you later.